Good morning, boys and girls. This is Miss Mejia here, your Standard 6 teacher. And today we will be doing social studies. I know that all of you love social studies. Am I right? Oh, yes, I am. Well, for today we will be doing a number of fun activities, and I hope that you will really enjoy this lesson. Our topic for today's lesson is the development of Belize from 1600 to 1981. And there I have some pictures there on the slide that shows what was going on in Belize, early on in Belize. And then I also have a map showing our lovely country. So are you ready for this lesson? Okay. Our objective for today. By the end of this lesson, boys and girls, you will be able to identify and outline important dates in connection with the development of Belize from 1600 to 1981. Now, does that date rings a bell for you? 1981? Yes, I know it does. It's a very significant date for our country. As we go on beyond in this lesson, you will learn more about the different dates that are significant for us as a country. At the end of this lesson, you will also be able to explain the significance of each date outlined. Please keep in mind that for today's lesson, I will be providing you with a list of these significant dates because I do not want you to go out and do extensive research. So Miss will be providing those dates for you. Are we clear on that? Very good. Now, you're at the end of this lesson as well. Your task will be to create a 3D timeline to display the selected development in Belize from 1600 to 1981. Now, boys and girls, after you have created your timeline, you will videotape yourself. You will make a short 3 minutes video presentation of yourself explaining the information on your timeline. I hope you understand that. Then your final task will be to upload a picture of your 3D timeline, and you will also upload your video presentation in Google Classroom. For those students who are not in Google Classroom, you can send this information to me via WhatsApp. And then of course we have the students who are receiving packages. You will submit these activities to class. All right, so let's get into our introduction for our lesson today. And for our introduction, we will be playing a game. I know you all love games because Miss Mejia loves games as well. Well, the game that we will be playing today is called I Know Belize. Of course, all of us should know something about Belize because Belize is where we live. Belize is our country. So we will be looking at fun facts about Belize. This is a trivia game. You will answer questions to the best of your ability about Belize. You will only be given 5 seconds. So you have to think fast or else you will lose your turn. Are you ready? Yes, I know you are. So let's play our game. All right. I know Belize. For this trivia game, you will answer historical question about our country. Let's go into the first question. Question number 1. In what year did Belize gain its independence? In what year did Belize gain its independence? Let me give you some time to answer. Right. 1981. You all are very smart. I love it. Question number 2. It reads, what are the main colors of the Belizean national flag? What are the main colors of the Belizean national flag? Is it red, green, and blue? Or is it red, white, and blue? 5 seconds. Let me hear your answer. Jot it down. Good. Red, white, and blue. Let's go to question 3 now. Question 3 reads, what is the capital of Belize? Or the capital of Belize. We all should know the capital of Belize. Yes, Belmopan is the capital of Belize, boys and girls. You are right. I am loving this game. Question number 4. Belize is bordered north by, you know your cardinal points, right? Good. So Belize is bordered north by Guatemala or Mexico? Mexico. You are right. Very good. Let's go to our final question now. The final question is the first Prime Minister of Belize, or the first Premier of Belize. Is it Right Honorable George Cadle Price or Mr. Said Musa? Good, great job. Right Honorable George Cadle Price. Now I have additional questions for this trivia game. It's a game that was designed in PowerPoint presentation, so I will upload it in Google Classroom and then you can continue play this game. Now remember, when you play it in Google Classroom, you will need to think fast and click on the answer. Okay, boys and girls? Let's move on now into our lesson. So we will be looking at significant dates for Belize. We will be talking about these dates between 1600 and 1981. And like I mentioned, these dates are very significant because it helps to shape our country. It builds up, or it makes up, the history of our unique country. Now we're going to use a flow chart just to outline the different dates that I have selected here to include in your timeline that you will be creating. So let's outline some important dates in the development of Belize from 1600 to 1981. Our first date, of course, we need to start off with 1600s. Then we will be looking at 1763 and 1783. Remember now, I am outlining these dates first before I explain to you what had happened during this particular time. Okay? We will further look at 1847 and 1853, or 1847 to 1853. We will look at 1859, and for me, 1859, it's always an interesting topic, boys and girls, because this has to do with the Guatemala's claim to Belize. Then we will move on to 1862. Let's continue with our flow chart. Remember, I'm outlining the dates that you will be using, and then I also have some additional information in Google Classroom. Your notes are being provided for you, so you will need to read through those notes while you are preparing for your presentation. I don't want you to just create a timeline at home. You also need to be able to present that timeline for me, because I need to know that you're able to articulate yourselves. All right, let's continue with our selected dates. We have 1893, 1930s, 1954, 1961, 1964, 1970, 1973, 1981. And 1981 is the final part. This is where Belize had gained its independence. Very good. We had just answered this question in our trivia game. So it's fresh in your mind and you know it. Let me further explain now in detail what had happened in each one, or using each one of these dates. We want to look at what had happened during these times. I list out the dates that we're looking at. I hope you had written them down. And we're going to look, or I will give more detailed description of what had happened around those particular times. So in 1600, boys and girls, the area of present-day Belize became part of Spain's possession in Central America and the Caribbean. During this time, British buccaneers and woodcutters, they began to settle around Belize's river. So now they start to come into Belize. In 1763 and 1783, Spain signs treaties granting British subjects the privilege of cutting but remains sovereignty. So Spain during this time had given the British the permission to cut log wood in the area. Are you with me? Very good. Let's move on. So now let's look at 1798, 1847 and 1853. Now 1798, all of us know this. It was a 10th day of set. Oh, very good. You know it. In 1798, that's the Battle of St. George's Key. And also, Spain tries to remove British settlers from the area by force, but they failed. So in this case, who had won the battle? Who won this battle? Very good. The British won the battle, or the Baymen at that time. Remember, it was the Spaniards and the Baymen. So the Baymen had won that battle. In 1847 to 1853, several thousand Spanish-speaking refugees settled in northern Belize, and the Mayan communities relocate to north and west following the Caste War in Yucatan, or La Guerra del Caste. Now, in Belize today, boys and girls, you still notice that in the northern part of our country, it is, when you go there, you will mostly find Spanish-speaking people. You will mostly find the Hispanic people there. So, that around that time, let me repeat it, several thousand Spanish-speaking refugees settled in northern Belize, and Maya communities relocate to the north and west following the Caste War. And I hope that you are looking at the pictures, because these pictures will come back to haunt you at the end of my presentation. In 1859, remember I said earlier, 1859 is a very important yet significant and can be depressing, because this is when Britain and Guatemala signed treaty defining borders with Belize British rule. So this was the start of the Guatemala claim to Belize, the Guatemalan dispute. And we have talked about this a lot, especially in prior classes in Standard 5. Remember, we did this in Standard 5 as well. So you should have a very good understanding of what had happened in 1859. If not, continue to read your notes that are being provided, so that when you may do your presentation, you are able to explain for me. In 1862, Belize formally declared a British crown colony and named British Honduras. Boys and girls, first, the country's name was not Belize. It was British Honduras. And I have a picture there showing what the money even looked like during that time, right? So Belize was formerly was known as British Honduras first, and then later on, as time goes by, the name was officially changed to Belize. And as I further explain, we will reach that point when Belize's name was formally changed to Belize, from British Honduras to Belize. Let's move on then. 1893 and 1930s. In 1893, Mexico renounces claim to Belizean territory. Belize had always have a very good working trading relationship with Mexico. Then at the one point in 1893, there is the Spencer-Mariscal Treaty, and this is whereby borders were defined, of course, the northern border, but yet Belize and Mexico had remained that friendship. So they have that bilateral relationship or friendship with each other. That's the reason why we can go over to Mexico, we do our shopping, we come back into our country. So it's good for these countries to establish that type of relationship. Although we're going through the dispute with Guatemala, I hope that eventually that will be settled so that we can as well have that very good, strong relationship with that particular country as how we have with Mexico. Are you with me, boys and girls? Very good. In 1930 or 1930s, something drastic had happened, and this is the Great Depression. The Great Depression, boys and girls, had affected the economy of Belize significantly. Now, during the 1930s, there was also a hurricane. At that time, it was just called the 1931 hurricane. That hurricane had come and caused significant or extensive damage to our country. Our country also went into depression. So that had happened in the 1930s. I hope that you are taking notes because you will need this information for your timeline. I will repeat that again. You will need this information for your timeline. Alright, let's continue with our dates. 1954. In 1954, it was a general election, and this general election was held in British Honduras. Remember, Belize was first known as British Honduras before the name was formally changed. The first election that was held under the universal adult suffrage. Boys and girls, let me explain that universal adult suffrage came into effect 1954, whereby all adults at the age of 18 were able to vote. This election was won by the People's United Party, and that's when Honorable George Cadle Price had become the first premier of Belize. Then again, another thing had happened. Another natural disaster struck our country. In 1961, Hurricane Hattie comes, and Hurricane Hattie killed more than 2,000 people in our country. So again, that was another devastating time for Belize. Let's continue with our significant dates. 1964. In 1964, that's when Belize had achieved self-government. It was also one of the first attempts to solve the problem with Guatemala, in which Belizeans were involved. Remember, I mentioned earlier that in 1859, that's when that dispute started with Guatemala. So now we're talking about 1964, and that dispute comes up again in our discussion. So now we know that it is something that has been going on for a very long time, and still yet it hasn't been resolved. In 1970 and to 1973. In 1970 now, this is when our capital city, Belmopan, was recognized as the center of our nation. It was recognized as the capital of Belize. And then in 1973, which is like 3 years after, the country's name was legally changed to Belize. Remember, first our country's name was British Honduras. Now, in 1973, that name was changed to what, boys and girls? Right, it was changed to Belize. And now we go to the last date on our timeline, which is 1981. I love this date and I love this time of the year. This is when Belize gained its independence. Now, even after Belize has gained its independence, Belize had also joined other organizations such as Commonwealth, United Nations, and non-aligned movement. Remember, at the end of the day, the country needs to build its ties with other countries as trading relationships. They establish that friendship so that we can interact with other countries. We cannot just stand alone and feel like we can do it by ourselves, right? So at this time, it's independence. Belize gained its independence in 1981, and Belize had also joined other organizations. Let's go over the organizations: Commonwealth, United Nations, and non-aligned movement. Very good. And look at the pictures carefully. It just shows like some of the celebration. You see how people lined up. They have big parade, a number of festivities as a way of recognizing our independence. So, boys and girls, that brings us to the end of our timeline discussion. Now, we're still not finished as yet because I need to do a recap. I want to know if you were listening to the teacher. So we will play another game as it brings us to our closure. So we will play a game. So let's end off this lesson by playing this matching game. Now the matching game is just to see how well you remember certain dates or what had happened. Okay? Good. Alright, it's time to match now. Let's get into this activity. So we have the description there on one side and the dates. Let's look at it carefully. I will give you an opportunity to read through carefully. Let me go through them. We have the Mariscal-Spencer Treaty. I have a second picture. The second picture is showing a natural disaster. I will not say the name, but I hope you remembered it from the presentation earlier. So look at that picture. It's a natural disaster that had affected our country and killed about 2,000 people. The third box, British Honduras changed to Belize. And then I have a flag there showing the Union Jack in Belize and in the Belize map. So that is British Honduras changed to Belize. I am giving you the opportunity now, boys and girls, to try as much as possible to match. So you should be thinking. The Great Depression. The Great Depression. British buccaneers and woodcutters begin to settle around the Belize River. British buccaneers and woodcutters begin to settle around the Belize River. Then we have Britain and Guatemala signed treaty defining borders with Belize. Are you ready to match now? Let's go. Mariscal-Spencer Treaty. What year was that? Right. 1893. I'm sorry. 1893. Next picture dear. The picture. Right. Very good. Hurricane Hattie. What year was Hurricane Hattie, boys and girls? 1961. That's right. British buccaneers and woodcutters begin to settle around the Belize River. This is the early start of the timeline. What year is it? Very good. 1600s. 1600s. Britain and Guatemala signed treaty defining borders with Belize. In what year? Let me hear you. Good. 1859. Boys and girls, you did an excellent job with this activity. I am super proud of you. Now, you will be using all of this information to put together your timeline. So now let's go to our final activity, which is the conclusion of this lesson. Okay, for the conclusion, you are going to create a 3D timeline to display the selected dates that has to do with the development in Belize from 1600 to 1981. After you create your timeline, but let me explain to you that you need to be very creative with this. Very creative. You will videotape yourself and then upload that video presentation into Google Classroom or on our WhatsApp platform. Please don't make your video too long. Keep it at 3 minutes maximum. Be creative with your timeline. Include pictures. Okay, boys and girls, so here I have a sample of the timeline that you will be making. Now I just did a quick one so you can see. You will be 3D. I want you to be very creative. So you will add pictures and descriptions to each one of it. So your timeline gonna have a maximum, I believe it's 12 to 14 dates. I hope you're looking at it carefully. And each one of those dates should be accompanied by a description or an explanation as well as a picture. Now, if you cannot print your picture like what I have here on this timeline, it is okay for you to draw. Some of you are able, you know how to draw properly, so you can use your creativity and draw. Do you understand? So now I am going to look forward to your timeline. Remember, you will only take a picture of it for those people in Google Classroom. And those people who are using paper-based, you will submit it to me at school. With that said, boys and girls, have a great day, and I hope you enjoyed this lesson. I'll see you all soon.